All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to take Shakespeare's 16th century pastoral comedy, As You Like It, and turn it into a cinematic, totally memorable masterclass. Whether you're a focused learner gearing up for an exam, or you just want to really master this classic, you are in the exact right place.
Here's how our explainer is going to unfold today. We'll start by meeting the cast, then track their flight to the forest, dig into the disguise and love plots, explore the core themes, break down the famous "All the World's a Stage" speech, and finally, wrap it all up with a final exam recap.
Okay, part 1. Meet the cast. Let's look at our dramatis persona. First up, we have Rosalind, and wow, she is an absolute powerhouse. She's an exiled princess fleeing persecution in her uncle's court. If you need 3 keywords to remember her by, think witty, independent, and subversive. She is literally the emotional core of this play. By adopting a disguise as a young man named Ganymede, she actually orchestrates the action and drives the whole narrative forward.
Then we have Orlando. He's the severely mistreated younger brother of the wealthy Oliver. Your keywords for him? Brave, love-struck, and poetic. Now, Orlando instantly falls head over heels for Rosalind the moment they meet, but thanks to a murderous sibling, he's forced to flee, which kicks off our romantic plot and gets all the physical action moving.
And providing a really sharp counter-perspective to all of that is Jacques, our melancholic traveler. He's cynical, reflective, and deeply isolated. So while everyone else is running around falling in love, Jacques is the cynical observer, the guy who famously weeps over a slaughtered deer. He brings this intense philosophical contrast to the play's otherwise bright pastoral optimism.
Moving on to Section 2, Flight to the Forest. Let's trace this chronological journey. You can really see the cause and effect flow here as our characters escape the oppressive court. Day 1 kicks right off with a brutal wrestling match, where Orlando surprisingly beats the court champion. Then, by Day 2, the usurping Duke Frederick completely loses it and banishes Rosalind. Day 3, Rosalind and her cousin Celia, now in disguise, make it to the mythical Forest of Arden. And by Day 4, a very lovesick Orlando is literally posting these simplistic love poems to Rosalind on the trees. They're settling into the chaotic but deeply liberating woods.
Which brings us to Section 3, Disguise, Love, and Discovery.
Now this is where it gets incredibly layered. First, Rosalind, who is still disguised as the boy Ganymede, approaches Orlando and pretends to offer him a cure for his lovesickness by, get this, role-playing as Rosalind. It's wild. Second, a shepherdess named Phoebe actually falls in love with the disguised Rosalind. Third, the court jester Touchstone completely parodies high romance by wooing a country girl named Audrey. Ultimately, through all these elaborate gender reversals and messy love triangles, harmony is restored when Hymen, the god of marriage, steps in to officiate a massive quadruple wedding.
All right, Section 4, Themes of the Play.
Listen up, because this is a massive exam point. You've got this stark contrast. On one side, there's court life under Duke Frederick, and that is entirely defined by fighting, usurpation, betrayal, arbitrary injustice, and actual literal threats of death. On the flip side, you have country life in the Forest of Arden. This represents liberty, harmony, forgiveness, and healing through nature. It's the place where justice is finally restored.
Then, of course, we have the highly studied theme of gender and disguise. Remember, back in Shakespeare's day, Rosalind would have been played by a boy actor. So think about this. You have a boy portraying a girl who disguises herself as a boy who then pretends to be a girl. It's a total mind-bender. Rosalind uses her Ganymede persona to boldly subvert 16th century social norms. She completely tears down the idea of passive femininity, aggressively going after what she wants and proving that, in her own words, the wiser she is, the waywarder she is.
Another absolutely crucial symbol you need to remember is how the play visualizes envy. In Act 4, Orlando finds his abusive older brother Oliver sleeping in the forest. And there's this golden green snake tightening around Oliver's neck. But the moment it sees Orlando approaching, it unlinks itself and just slips away. This retreating snake is a perfect, striking visual for the sudden disappearance of envy and the arrival of true forgiveness. Right after that, Orlando actually saves Oliver from a lioness, which completely cements their reconciliation.
Next up, Section 5, All the World's a Stage.
Before those happy endings completely take over, Jacques forces us to pause and reflect on the performative nature of human existence. In Act 2, Scene 7, he delivers this monologue outlining the 7 ages of man. He traces a person's life all the way from a puking infant to what he calls a second childishness, totally devoid of teeth, eyes, and taste. It reflects a deeply cynical, almost dark view of life's futility.
And that speech kicks off with some of the most legendary words in English literature. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. Now notice how this directly echoes the Latin motto of the newly opened Globe Theatre, which is exactly where this play was likely first performed around 1599. Shakespeare's doing something really clever here. He's practically winking at his audience, reminding them that they are, in fact, just watching a play.
Finally, Section 6, our final exam visual recap.
Okay, let's lock in exactly who is who and how their individual arcs wrap up. Rosalind, who spent the play disguised as Ganymede, marries Orlando. Orlando, our exiled lover, marries Rosalind. And what about Duke Frederick? Well, the usurper runs into a religious hermit in the forest, completely repents of his evil ways, and actually willingly hands the dukedom right back to his brother. Talk about a turnaround.
Now, here are the core facts you absolutely need to secure. The play was written around 1599 and later published in the First Folio of 1623. The direct source text for this is Thomas Lodge's Rosalind, which firmly plants this as a pastoral comedy. And here is a fantastic little detail to drop in an essay. 55% of the play is written in prose, not verse. Shakespeare is actively subverting courtly verse conventions here, which perfectly matches Rosalind's direct, highly natural character. Nailing these exact details will for sure elevate your understanding and your exam scores. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. After all the cross-dressing, the fierce independence, and the total bending of the rules, the characters eventually just return to traditional marriage and standard hierarchies at the end. So what do we make of that? Does that ending undermine Rosalind's bold subversion throughout the play? Or was the forest simply a temporary holiday from reality? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining this explainer today, and keep questioning the text.